What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to episode 2 if you're on Spotify, episode 3 on YouTube of the Fantasy Puck podcast. I'm your host, Mike, as always, and with me today is my co-host, Chris, better known as Clarky. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. This week was pretty full slate in terms of fantasy hockey. Like, we got games on every single day. It's like week 3, so people are kind of starting to get a general idea of how their team's been performing / underperforming. So lots to go over. We have some injury updates as well too, and some underperforming players that we want to talk about that you have written down here. So I'm excited to get into this.
A new segment that we're going to try and introduce here. Some people were calling it out in the Discord as a recommendation, the sustainable and unsustainable. Kind of from the Fantasy Hockey podcast. We didn't want to copy it straight up, so we kind of made it our own little twist here, and something we're excited about, and that we're going to be hopefully introducing into every single episode moving forward. But yeah, I agree, man. It's been a very full week. I found myself using all my waiver acquisitions for some of those off nights because my matchups this week were pretty tight during the week, and I found near the end I was pulling away, and maybe this is a case of just my acquisitions doing well for me. So, I mean, maybe we can jump right in and talk about how your fantasy week went. Were you winning? Were you losing in some of your leagues? How'd all that go?
So
you're pulling it up.
In the league where I'm trying to tank, like I'm trying to actively tank, Coyotes. I'm actually winning by a pretty significant amount right now.
Sit your players.
Actually though, no, I considered it. So I wanted to, we can get to trades and trade talk and stuff in a little bit, but my team has a little bit more of a different outlook than it originally did when I drafted it. I got Jake DeBrusk, and I ended up getting Ricard Raquel, who somebody dropped off of waivers.
Nice.
So just more value added there to my team, which I think going forward later into the year will definitely pay dividends if I need to pick up some later round picks or just improve some picks here or there, and teams that are looking to kind of improve their team. I'm the guy. If you need a player, I'm the guy that you're going to early on in my one league. But ironically enough, the favorite after going and acquiring both McDavid, he went out and acquired Connor McDavid.
Leon somehow. Too, right?
He had Leon before that. So he's now in a position where he's in the bottom half of the league, and he's just full panicking. He is trying to move guys left, right, and center to improve his team. Yeah. So it's interesting. I wanted to talk about his goalies briefly because number one, it's a keeper league. So he kept Frederik Andersen from last year. He ended up getting Frederik Andersen.
I probably would too.
He also had a very high pick this year after selling pretty significantly last year to kind of prepare him for this year. I mentioned it on the previous podcast, the way that the league works is keepers are on specific contracts. So you can only have a keeper for up to 3 years. So this is Freddie's final year, but he ended up drafting Ilya Sorokin with, I believe it was the 2nd overall pick in this year's draft. And he also has Varlamov, so he's doing the one-team goalie strategy. And I wanted to kind of get your input early on with Sorokin and Varlamov, because initially I was this is a terrible blunder on his end, but Sorokin looks pretty great so far.
So, and this is a perfect segue into something I had. I see you already smiling, so So if you guys watched my buy low video, I made it on the 26th of October. I did in the video say 10:17 p.m., which an Eastern time zone would mean the game was already over. It was actually 8:17 p.m. So I had Sorokin as a buy low candidate. I'm looking at his career stats. They look exceptional. I'm looking at how he's doing this year. Not good. I think the Islanders, it is crazy. I think this Islanders team may be the only team in the NHL that did not make a single move. They look the exact same on paper. I don't think there's any difference in their roster.
It was them, and I
minus Chara.
Yeah, I think Winnipeg, the only person they added to the roster was Cole Perfetti, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm looking through the roster. I'm everyone's the exact same. But anyways, so I make the buy low video, and I wanted to point out that currently they were playing in the game. It was the end of the first period, and I said, Sorokin, knowing my luck, will have a 40-save shutout, and then I'm just going to get eaten alive in the comments saying, why would you recommend this guy as a buy low? But I made sure to cover my own butt. I don't know if we can swear on this. Cover my own butt and say that they're currently
That's
playing.
not a swear word, Mike. That's okay.
Yeah. And sure enough, 41 save shutout. The comment section was going wild. That was hysterical. Like, I didn't look at the comments for like, I think till the next morning, and I had a laugh seeing everyone like, I can't believe you predicted it. So
Mystic Mike, baby.
Let's go. My God, that was hilarious. But anyways, going back to this Islanders goaltending tandem, historically, this team is so good at they have no offense. They win games on defense. I don't think Trotz is there anymore. I'm not really a coach guy. I don't really know coaches. No, but he's not there.
Barry Trotz took a leave of absence from coaching, I believe, this year. So it is. Oh, I forget his name. Oh, it's going to bug me. I'm going to look it up.
Google search. Yeah. Anyways, so I think a lot of people think when a coach leaves that there's completely new systems that are built into the team. I don't think that's the case at all, actually. I think they use the same systems that their whole entire roster is familiar with. So this team is going to be good defensively, which means their goalies are going to be good. And that's what we're seeing. Sorokin's a top 5 goalie in the league. I mean, we could have picked him for our Vezina candidate this year instead of Markstrom. It would have been just as fine. But yeah, he put himself in a good position. He still has Freddie. So Freddie, Sorokin, Varlamov.
Freddie, Sorokin, Varlamov. Lane Lambert is the name of the coach. So thankfully I didn't say
I would have never in my life guessed that.
Good for Lane, though. Like, the Islanders seem to be... They had a wild comeback against Colorado last night. Did you see that?
4 goals in the third?
It was they scored 5 straight. They were down 3-0. I couldn't believe it. Like, I thought it was just the game was over.
Francouz.
I still have him on my team. I'm looking to pick up Stuart Skinner. They scored 5 straight after being down 3-0. Which is like, that's crazy, especially against Colorado, right?
I know, one of the hardest teams to score against. But 2 fringe goalies, that's what you're going to get.
It's true.
But a player you mentioned, a goaltender, Stuart Skinner.
Stuart Skinner season.
I honestly think this could be, and I said it in our group chat last night, this could be my best preseason call since the inception of Fantasy Puck. Because I recommended him as a must-own goalie, saying Jack Campbell is not a legitimate NHL starter. He hasn't started more than 50 games in a year, meaning, you know, if you take last year's numbers, he started 49 with the Leafs, which leaves 33 other starts. And I was looking through the comments. I had a comment saying, no way Stuart Skinner gets 40% of the starts. Jack Campbell is the number 1. There's no way Stuart Skinner gets the net. And what are we seeing now? Jack Campbell's been terrible, man. I think he let 5 against Chicago.
Good. He hasn't been good, and I talked about him in our must-add players for Week 4, which is out, by the way. So if you're on YouTube watching this right now, go click on that video after you watch the podcast.
Quick plug.
If you haven't already. Quick plug. But like, I talked about him, and I said that this is the number 1 goalie in the NHL that could see more volume going forward. And again, like I mentioned, the fact that like you said, like eventually Edmonton's just got to start playing their best goalie.
They want to have to win. Who cares what the money? They need to win.
Which has been Stuart Skinner. And regardless, like I agree, like it doesn't matter how much you're paying Jack Campbell. I just want to bring up something that Stuart Skinner leads the NHL in save percentage right now. And
3
so
starts?
do you think like this is an underperforming or an overperforming, or do you think like where do you see Skinner going forward? Is it something like, obviously like a 957 is a little bit extreme for a save percentage for a guy that doesn't have any NHL sample, but like going forward, where do you see him in retrospect to where you'd expect him to be?
I think he's overperforming, obviously, because a 957 is not sustainable by any means, but I think we're going to see him regress a little bit to maybe a 915 save percentage, which is like Thatcher Demko range last year, Kemper range, and then probably a 270, 280 goals against average, because Edmonton gives up a lot of shots and they give up a lot of chances. But the reason why you're going to like Skinner is because they win games. So if you're in a league where it's more saves and wins heavy, he's definitely worth someone like to roster on your team. But I agree, where moving forward, I think he could be one of the sneakiest goalie ads on the free agency. I think he's up to 22%, but you know, we drafted him in that big 14 team league. He might have been at 3-4%. Not many people were on him, but at some point they're going to have to put the money aside and say we need to play the best goalie that will win us games. And right now that's Skinner. 70 saves 70 saves against the Flames this year. Like his rebound control is exceptional. Like they had a lot of good scoring chances where he just eats the puck up and there's nothing to show for it.
Yeah, it looks like unbelievable so far to start the season. Another goalie that I kind of wanted to touch on that has just been absolutely incredible out of the gate, and somebody that I actually ended up trading recently was not Ottinger, but Carter Hart of the Philadelphia Flyers. He was in my sell high video, and like I talked about it last podcast where I kind of like panicked a little bit too early with Markstrom last season, and that ended up biting me in the butt. But I think like I was just worried in the sense that like obviously it's early on, like nobody expected Philly to be this good. We know the type of style that John Tortorella likes to play with his hockey teams. And do you think that Carter Hart can continue the success that he's seen with the Flyers?
No, he's overperforming, but he is, and I've said this before, and I said this on the last podcast, he is a good NHL goaltender. I just don't think this is a good NHL team, and they're eventually going to come back down to life, I hope. But man, like the first thing you said in this podcast was we're kind of starting to understand who the good players are this year and who are the busts this year. Week 3, 12 games into the season. Actually, 11 games for Nashville and San Jose. But I think he's overperforming big time. He's going to regress at some point. But was it Colorado where he had 47 saves? Like he's just
48 saves against Florida.
Oh my God. I want to talk about Florida in a bit, but yeah, I mean, I don't know how sustainable it is. And someone said, oh man, there was a good comment where he kind of like contradicted himself where he's like, he's keeping them in the game. And I'm like, yeah, but at some point, how long can you be keeping them in the game for, right? John Gibson, see what happens every year?
Yeah, I guess the point that I was trying to make when I asked the question initially was like obviously like he's overperforming right now. But like, do you think that like long term he could be like a 910, like a 905 goalie and be somebody that like you just keep on your team to like because he's getting a lot of volume right now and his save percentage isn't like bad by any means. Like obviously, like I'm expecting Philly to regress whenever that happens, hopefully sooner than later. But I think that like is he capable enough as a goaltender to hold in fantasy?
Yeah, I think he's a solid goalie too. I don't think he has goalie 1 upside yet though, just because of the team. So, and I'm sure we can go through the list of who the goalie 1s are, but it's just, the first 7-8 goalies that were taken off the board are likely goalie 1s. So I would say, he's more of a goalie 2, but he'll be interesting next season, man. I wonder what his ADP is going to end up being. Like if he's going to be like an Ottinger this year and go from like 200 to 40, we'll see. But
looking a little bit ahead.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. And we can cover that in the overperforming players segment of this podcast. Anyways, guys, so one thing I want to talk about here a little bit, shifting away from fantasy hockey, is we are looking to do a fundraiser for Movember, something that's really close to our hearts, something that, we've been affected by in our lives. It's a very important fundraiser every year. And this year we are looking to raise $1,000. So we will match up to $500 of every donation that we get. And we think this is just a really good cause, and we can use our platform of crazy hockey fans that are super passionate about the sport to do some good. So we are looking to raise up to $1,000. We will match 500 of it, and we will have the link in the description below. We will be talking about it in the Discord, and I think this is a very good cause. And we will see who can grow the best mustache between the two of us. I mean, you can already tell who's winning, but
yeah, I don't know if I'm really going to compete in that sense. We'll see. I tend to shave like 8 or 9 years off my life every time I shave my facial hair. So if you see me on the next podcast and I look like a 12-year-old, just know that I did not go back in time. But I'm excited. Like Mike brought this up about a week ago or so. Talked about it. I know you're going to have something coming out on the channel that is something like a little bit more interpersonal with you, which I'm like not only excited to watch and to just experience, but Again, guys, like it's a great cause. Like Mike said, it's something that's definitely close to our heart. Men's health is something that's often, I feel like, times very looked over this day and age. And I think
100%.
that any support at this point would be great. Even if we don't match our goal, like we felt like this was something that we wanted to do just as like a platform that's kind of like growing and upcoming, that we want to make sure that we're promoting the right things and establishing just something that that we believe is a good cause going forward. So
Yeah.
if you guys find the time to donate, great. Thank you so much for your support going forward as always. But in terms of the mustache, I don't know if I can just historically based. I don't know. I might come out of the gate flying. Who knows?
Yeah, you're a sleeper pick on the mustache train there, but it's
we
funny.
we gotta crop Don into the pod somehow, where it's just like his face with like his current mustache update as we progress through the months of November.
You could probably grow a pretty good one, actually.
I think Don's like a low key dark horse.
We do have a year of age on him, which is, you know, I was growing a mustache in grade 8 and he was in grade 7 with nothing. So
I definitely did not have a mustache in grade 8.
Yeah. But it's funny, like at my work right now, and this is like not fancy related. It's just like, I'm trying to convince people to do Movember and raise money. And literally there's one other person who is also Italian, because I live in a city full of Italians. There's one other person that wants to do it with me. No one else. We have an office of 50 people. No one wants to do it. Everyone's like, I'm not shaving my beard. I'm like, yeah, but it's not for the looks. It's for the cause. Yeah. So it looks like my work is going to be just two of us just grinding out these mustaches, just trying to raise some money for a good cause. But I'm happy that we have a big platform here of crazy fans and awesome people that
I'm excited. I might make a channel in Discord for like a mustache update where people can just post pictures of their mustaches. Who knows?
Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, that's just something I want to touch on. So yeah, going into this fantasy week, you know, I'm not going to have time today to get into the upcoming schedule analysis to post that video, which I really enjoy doing. But yeah, we do have a handful of 4-game schedules this week, which are teams you want to be targeting for streaming. And we have Anaheim, Buffalo, Carolina, Detroit, Florida, LA, and Washington. It's hard for me to go through each one and kind of talk about streamers, but I mean, if you're active enough in our Discord or just following us on Twitter, everything will be on there, where we're going to be hammering out some good streaming options for you guys. And someone I'm kind of interested about is Frank Vetrano, the DraftKings shot volume king. And he's now playing 19 minutes on the first line in Anaheim. I think he's going to be one of the best streaming options this week. He has San Jose twice, Vancouver once, and Florida. So a very good matchup for him. Are you looking at Frank Vetrano's stats right now?
I am.
Shot volume king.
He's not somebody that was on my radar, I will admit. Just based off of the fact that like Anaheim has like maybe 2 or 3 players that I'm interested in from like a fantasy hockey perspective. But yeah, 23 shots in 8 games is a decent chunk. Seems to be blocking and hitting quite a bit as well too. 17 minutes, like that's solid. Daily Faceoff has him on the second line with Strome and Max Jones. But I mean, like how like they have McTavish on the fourth line, which is interesting. He is not power play 1. They have McTavish there instead.
Fourth line,
with Henry,
power play 1.
Terry, and Zegras. Yeah, like so many rookies have gotten that treatment, and
it's crazy this year.
I watched the 32 Thoughts segment last night on Hockey Night in Canada, where they kind of talked about trying to get Shane Wright more involved, because he's only seeing 6 minutes a night and he's been healthy scratched. Like this will be like the 3rd game in the row that he's been healthy scratched.
Point?
I know, and that's what they were saying. Like they talked to the GM Ron Francis of the Kraken, and he was saying that like we definitely want to get him more involved, because it doesn't look like they want to send him back to the OHL, which is like that and a lot of other teams' gripe so far. Like I know, who was it on Dallas?
Wyatt Johnson. He's sweet.
Pete DeBoer was saying how something along the lines of a quote where he might have to lock him in a trunk to keep him from the GM from sending him back to the OHL, because he likes the player so much. So that'll be interesting. He was not, I think. Yeah, he wasn't on our radar really at all for rookies this season. But he seems to be solidified as the 3rd line.
I actually watched him in person last year. I went to a OHL game, and he actually led the OHL in points last year. If I'm not mistaken, you can look this up. 124 in 62 games, maybe 56 games. He had a crazy season in the OHL, and he absolutely dominated the game I was at. I'm like, this kid's going to be a stud. And I look it up, first rounder to Dallas, and sure enough, he's been very good. How many points? 124, 126 in the OHL?
124 points, 46 goals in 68 games. Yeah, absolutely tore it up.
And playoffs?
I can't see his playoff stats.
Oh, Hockey DB
I will find
usually has it.
I'm on Hockey DB right now.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong then. I remember always looking at on the right.
Regular season, postseason, show
stats
me the postseason.
Guy. Come on, stats guy.
Huge stats guy. Had 41 points in 25 games with the Windsor Spitfires.
So 165-point season in the OHL last year, including playoffs. It's just a crazy year from this kid. And
lighting it up.
Yeah, I wasn't on him this year, but he could be a huge sleeper next year because they have a lot of holes in that roster. And like we talked about before we got on this podcast, is this team is in desperate need of scoring from someone that isn't on the first line. So keep Wyatt Johnson in mind for 2023. He will probably be one of my deep league sleepers next year. Anyways, so the next segment I want to get into here is just the injuries that are happening along the league right now. There's probably a lot of, my team is definitely facing it in some of my fantasies. Your team's probably facing it. And people that are watching are probably dealing with some of these injuries right now. So a lot of day-to-day guys, but I'm hoping you guys have IR plus in some of your leagues. Do you play in leagues with IR plus? Oh, it's so important.
Most of the leagues that I play in have IR plus, except for the one keeper that we're in, I believe. We have IR plus in that league as well.
I think I have Heiskanen on there, maybe.
And I think that the reason why that's now a thing is because there were so many issues with COVID and everything in the past couple of years. So it was hard to you'd have guys that are just randomly out of your lineup for a couple games and then they'd be perfectly fine because of the whole COVID protocol. So you had to kind of add IR plus into your guys' leagues for it to even run. So it's difficult in that sense. But again, if you play, I primarily play on Yahoo now. I don't have any leagues on ESPN or anything like that. And a lot of the time, they're pretty decent with their updates and how quickly they are to update player injuries and stuff like that. But a lot of the times you'll just see players out day to day. There's IR, there's LTIR, so it kind of gives you a better depiction of what their injury is. But yeah, definitely would recommend adding at least one IR plus slot to your guys' league, just because things kind of happen where say for example, John Tavares was considered out for the first during preseason, and you weren't able to put him on IR initially. So if you drafted him, he was just taking up a roster spot right away.
Not playing, yeah.
So not playing, but he was perfectly fine. He was cleared to go for game one, which was great. But if he wasn't and he was out for the first game, then you're just kind of stuck already down a guy on your roster, right?
I find the best way to use IR plus is if you're looking to stream players, take advantage of putting your day-to-day guys on IR plus and just streaming. That's what I've been doing. It's been working so well, where you don't have to lose a roster spot for streaming a player. Anyway, so just
I actually haven't been sorry. I haven't been pretty bad with injuries. The only ones that I've had recently was Dylan Holloway. I picked up just to kind of see what kind of deployment he was going to get in Edmonton, because I did see that he was playing in the top 6 times. So he was somebody that I was just holding on and seeing what kind of happened with him. It doesn't look like he's staying in the top 6. He might even go back, go back down to junior. But him, Chikrin, and I have McAvoy in a league, and that's pretty much
the guys you drafted. So you haven't been really ridden yet. Yeah. Anyways, so going to the injured players right now, I'm going to give you the player and kind of the impact it has. And feel free to step in at any time here. But David Krejci, day-to-day with an upper body injury. I don't own him anywhere, but I think this is good for Jake DeBrusk. I was watching the Bruins game. It looks like he's taken over that power play 1 spot with Marchand back. So Hall's off power play 1, DeBrusk is in. And when Krejci comes back, I'm not sure if he's going to take over for DeBrusk or if DeBrusk is going to stay there. But with Krejci out, DeBrusk is still power play 1. Marchand,
they have Pavel Zacha as second line center right now, so he might be a pretty good streaming option just Krejci's kind of out. I know he doesn't do much production wise, but he's not bad from a peripheral standpoint, especially if you count face-offs. Yeah. So if you guys are looking for a deep league stream, he gets exposure to Pasta, which I think is the main reason why you'd want him in the first place. But yeah, it doesn't really he's got 18 shots on the season, which is like not bad, but at the same time, he doesn't really hit, doesn't really block. But
Yeah.
5 points. 5 points is a lot better than I thought he would.
Should have dual position eligibility because I think he started the season off in Marchand's
Center
spot.
left wing. Yep.
Yeah. So Marchand day to day. This was just rest. He came back and then they had a game the next day, so they just wanted to play him in one game. He looked great. I have him in 2 leagues and I've been stashing him.
Yeah.
And I think, going back to the DeBrusque situation, if DeBrusque ends up being off power play 1, I think it's nullified by having Marchand now on his line. So, okay, so I think Chris left, but I'm still in here. I'll keep it going. Matthias Samuelsson is now on the IR, that defenseman signing they had for $4.5 million over 7 or 8 years, and no one really knew about him. It's not really good news for the Sabres. I think anytime a top 4 defenseman goes down, it kind of hurts their offense, but it's good for Dahlin, and I know you're a Dahlin owner.
I have him in 1 league, and he is, God, am I ever happy that I drafted this guy. Like,
got him plus 5,000 for Norris this year, so hopefully he sustains this. So the big name here, and I guess we can both talk about this, is Valeri Nichushkin is now day-to-day with a lower body injury. Exactly why I said he's a sell high. He played 62 games last season. He missed 20. He is 27 years old. He has injury history throughout his entire career. It was a matter of time. I mean, can he sustain a point per game pace? Yes, but can he sustain a point per game pace in 82 games? No.
So the one thing with Nichushkin, and I was getting just like ripped in the comments for saying that he was sell high, and
took it on the chin.
Everybody was just like, yeah, man, this guy's scoring 80 points. Like, I'd never move Nichushkin right now. And it's just like you can have a player that's having a hot start that you believe is just like having a breakout year, like absolutely by any means. The reason why he was in the sell high video is because, like you said, like the likelihood of him continuing to produce at this pace is just like ridiculous, like very unlikely. Like you said, he's had history with injury. He's kind of hovered around a point per game, and for him to like put up 80 points, that'd be the first time in his career, right? And so I looked at it as a sense that, like, he's hot right now. You're able to get a player that is safe essentially, and that the kind of production that you're getting out of him. So I get why people are hesitant to like move him, and they just want to hang on to him, especially depending on like where you got him in the draft. Like that, but like in a couple weeks, guys, like if his production starts to slow down and you're just like, oh, like I should have sold high on him, and it just kind of like comes back down to earth, especially his goal scoring. Like, he's just like on an absolute tear right now. Yeah. Like, just something that's completely unsustainable that he's never even come close to in his career.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he went actually a full season without scoring. So I guess the corresponding move here with Nichushkin out is Evan Rodriguez is now line 1, power play 1 with 2 goals last game, and Lehkonen got moved down to the second line. So I guess my theory with McKinnon deciding who gets to play with him is incorrect with this Lehkonen. I don't think there's any panic with Lehkonen right now. He's still playing good minutes. He's still playing the top 6 on the best offensive team in hockey. I'm not panicking. But yeah, Evan Rodriguez is probably an own in all leagues if he can continue to play line 1, power play 1. He's probably heavily available in 12 plus team leagues, 10 team leagues. He's probably owned, but deep league guys, I would probably be looking at, and I was completely backwards on that. 10 team leagues, he's definitely available, but 16 team leagues, he's probably not available.
He's 6% owned currently in Yahoo, so should be readily available to pretty much everybody. Colorado desperately needs a center. Like, I don't know, I think they tried Alex Newhook on the second line, which is somebody that I was kind of looking at, and that didn't even end up working out too well. So now they have JT Compher there on the second line. I'm curious to see what happens with Gabe when he comes back, whether or not he'll be center, put him on the top line, or whether they're going to play him second line center. Yeah,
he'll be second line center. He actually has a pretty good faceoff percentage, if I'm not mistaken. So Jake Ottinger here left the game, unfortunately. Oh my God, he's been such a beast for me in fantasy.
Unbelievable.
So I read he's just being reevaluated on Monday, and the corresponding move here is to add Scott Wedgwood. I mean,
look,
if he's getting starts on a good Dallas team,
I'm not confident at all in picking up Scott Wedgwood. If he starts getting more volume, we'll see kind of where he's at. But if Otter's out long term, like, I think I'm going to kind of stay away from Wedgwood. Heiskanen, we talked about Nils Lundqvist filling in on that first pair in the power play 1 slot. Yep. And then we're just talking about Ekblad right now and how good Montour has been for that team.
Can I step in here with this
Yeah.
Florida Panthers team?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I know you want to talk about them.
So what we've seen the last couple games is they are back to their 2021 form and are shooting the puck at an unprecedented rate right now. I think when Ekblad comes back, this Panthers team is going to go on an absolute tear. Their entire team, top to bottom, is completely undervalued in fantasy right now. Barkov, Bennett, Kachuk, I would say, is the only guy fairly valued. Reinhart, Bobrovsky, all undervalued. These are probably arguably the best trade targets to make right now if you're going after a team. I just traded Tuck for Bennett, and
Wow.
maybe it doesn't seem too good, but I actually had a full. My right wingers were full. I had no room left, and I needed a center. I was running with Trocheck, Barkov in that league, and there were nights where I just was losing roster spots because I didn't have centers. And Bennett's been an absolute beast. So I actually have his stats here, and we could talk about in the underperforming, but his minutes are up. He is on pace for 252 shots and 192 hits this season. On top of, he's on a slow goal pace, but if he maintains his shot rate, he's about 25 plus goals. He's also playing power play 1, so I was happy with the trade. But I think this Florida team is super, super undervalued, and they are shooting the puck like crazy. If you're looking to trade for some players and you find people in your league are undervaluing their Florida players, I think they are a very good trade target. And I think Montour is a great sell high because when Ekblad comes back, his value is probably going to dip quite a bit.
Yeah,
we'll still get minutes.
The one name that really jumps out to me, especially on the Florida roster, is Sam Reinhart, and the lack of production that he's had. Like, I don't think he has a goal yet, let alone
he was in my buy low. If you watched it,
I did watch the video, but I just wanted to bring him up because I felt that to me he would be the number one target just based off of how bad he's been to kind of start his season.
He's being dropped in leagues right now. He had he's got 78 points last year.
He's got 2 points in 9 games right now with 27 shots. Doesn't really hit, doesn't really block, but
his minutes are up though, right?
Yeah, playing 21 minutes a night, which he has a 0% shooting percentage because he hasn't scored yet. So in comparison to the last 3 seasons collectively, he's had 15%, 19%, 17%. He's a pretty good shooter. So expect that to kind of get back to fruition with him. And he's definitely the number one guy that I would target on Florida, just because I still think Barkov holds a little bit of value because of the name, and then Kachuk obviously coming off of last season, his value probably won't change too much.
You can probably grab Barkov for a guy you drafted 30 to 40th overall for a top 10 to 15 player. Anyways, so just I'll quickly run through the other couple. Looks like Talbot is practicing. I'd probably be adding him and stashing him right now. Palat is on the IR. Eric Holla, the corresponding move on the second line. Philip Grubauer placed on the IR. Martin Jones is now the clear number one starting goalie. Not really a flashy goalie is what I put in my notes, but he's going to get you starts. Quinn Hughes has been day to day. They don't know what to do with him. Looks like OEL is getting the pair 1 power play 1 reps. So if you need a de-streaming option, if Hughes continues to be out, OEL is the guy I'd be looking at. Brock Besser, man, disaster right now. I dropped him in 2 leagues.
Poor guy, man. I honestly feel for him so bad, especially after last year, that tough season where I believe his dad passed away, and then he just he couldn't find his rhythm at all. And then coming to this season, Elliot Friedman has openly said that he's rooting for the guy, and I definitely feel for him in that sense. But I see you have Kuzmenko down in your kind of still like him, and he's had 4 points his last 2 games. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was just the situation with Vancouver where, again, on the 32 Thoughts. Guys, if you don't listen to 32 Thoughts, I never recommend a podcast more in my entire life if you want to keep up with, hockey news and what's going on throughout the league. It's just so informative, and we'd like to listen to it a lot just to, kind of get an insider's view. Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick are just unbelievable, some of the most professional people in the industry. But they talked about how the players themselves have been warned that it's not just going to be a coaching adjustment. They're going to look to move pieces on the roster if things continue the way that they are. And so I wanted to get your thoughts. I know JT Miller's been in the conversation. I know Bo Horvat's been in the conversation. Who do you think that they end up
they're not going to sell
if they're going to? Really? You don't think so?
No, I don't think they're going to sell. They're the youngest team in the league right now too. They're
I
like
know.
one of the youngest teams in the league. I don't think they're going to sell.
I look at the team up and down, and on paper, they look very good.
They just need defense, man. They have no defense.
They need defense.
They didn't address it. They didn't address that problem. I don't know. Okay, so JT Miller, I think but they just locked him up for 8 years, did they not?
I know, that's the thing.
They're not going to trade him.
That's the thing. Horvat, and they got to sign Horvat at the end of the year as well.
So Horvat's going to Colorado.
Man, that would be huge for the Avs. There's the trade right there. Like, maybe you send back a guy like Sammy Girard, right? Somebody that can move the puck, somebody that's like solid, but they're pretty
Caps nullified, yeah.
They're pretty good on the left side. Like, they have OEL, they have Quinn Hughes, even though I believe he's been taking reps on right D as well throughout the season. But like, that's somebody. I don't think they give up a guy like Bowen Byram by any means, but
no chance. His trade value is too high.
Not
for a rental.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Like, I thought Jonathan.
It's funny that we were talking about that too.
I know. I think Jonathan Taves was somebody that I thought Colorado was going to look at kind of towards the trade deadline, just because like they need a second line center. Man, Bo Horvat would actually be a great fit. I love that take actually.
Yeah, 32 thoughts. Other players here, John Carlson's left the game with a lower body injury, so I would be adding Dmitry Orlov in leagues if he continues to be out long term. And Ehlers is traveling with the team but has not played, so I still think he is a hold and a potential buy low candidate because he does play a lot of minutes and he does have a great shot volume, but he cannot stay healthy. So
yeah, just another guy that's injury prone, unfortunately.
We are nearing the end of the podcast right now, so I think it's a good time to get into our prize picks performance analysis. Dun dun dun. Cue the music up. It's like all flashy. So we are partnered with Prize Picks. They will match your deposit up to $100. So 100% of your deposit up to $100. Meaning if you deposit $100, they will give you $100. If you deposit $50, they will also give you $50. So how does it work? You pick 2 to 5 players. If they go on the score more or less points in the Prize Pick projections, you will win money. So for example, if Bo Horvat, his projection is 2.5 shots and he gets 3 shots, you win money. If he goes to Colorado, he's definitely going to be a good ad. So this segment is sponsored by Prize Pick. So we are going to go through a few players that I have listed on overperforming, underperforming, and performing just right. And Chris is going to tell me if he thinks that they're there and why. So overperforming, I don't know if you draft him anywhere. I drafted him in our fantasy league, our keeper league. Erik Karlsson, 11 games played, 6 goals, 5 assists, 27 shots, 66 shot attempts, 9 blocks, 5 hits, and he's playing 24 minutes. Overperforming, that's where I have him at.
So I think it's a little bit of both. I wasn't a huge, excuse me. I wasn't a huge fan of Erik Karlsson initially. And I know like you guys were saying, oh, no, like now that Burns is gone, like you're seeing power play one time. And I just thought like, I looked at the guy, I'm like, you know what? He's had injury history. He doesn't seem like he's as mobile as he used to be. The age curves really kind of hit him going forward. And I didn't believe that he could get back up to his production. I definitely think he's overperforming right now, but I'd almost lean more towards like performing just right. Just because of the fact that like we know he's a talented defenseman, we know he can move the puck still. San Jose's been like just crippled in terms of like goal scoring. Like Timo Meier is just going through some going through a rough patch. He finally scored. He did finally get one, but I mean like you just expect that guy to be around like 35-40 goal mark. But I like Karlsson. Like I'll admit that I was wrong on that take. I think like as long as he continues to stay healthy, like he's gonna be around like that 50, even 60 point mark this season.
Okay, I remember another take. You're not gonna like this. When I drafted Sergachev in that league, you go, really, Mike Sergachev? I went and looked. He's like the 40th ranked player in our league, and I'm just sitting there like, yes.
Serg's really good with peripherals.
That's why. I agree to disagree. Anyways. The next player that I have on my overperforming list, Shane Pinto, 8 games, 6 goals, 1 assist, only 14 shots, 21 shot attempts, which is crazy to me that he has 6 goals, 43% shooting percentage, 1 block, 5 hits, 14.28 time on ice. Overperforming?
I think he's definitely overperforming. I talked about him in my must-add players video for week 4. I'm shocked that he's not playing second line right now.
I hope he gets there, though.
They have Derek Brassard there for some reason. I don't know what Ottawa is saying, but it's like this guy's scoring every game. And like, there's not a lot of NHL sample behind him. Obviously, his shooting percentage is ridiculous right now. Like, he just seems to, every time he shoots, the puck goes in. But I do have a couple Sens fans that I'm like good buddies with, and they're saying that like, man, the guy looks absolutely lights out. So I'm confident that if he continues to get, like, obviously his shooting percentage is going to come down. He's going to regress a little bit in the goal scoring category. He's not great when it comes to peripherals by any means, but if you're in deeper leagues, like, I still think he's a great pickup just because, number one, it looks like Norris is going to be done for the season, if not really long term, which sucks for the Sens, obviously. But I think eventually, like, Pinto's just going to play the second line. Like, I don't understand why they have Brassard there. I wouldn't even be surprised. Like, it makes more sense to me if they move like Giroux to center and then they put somebody else on the wing and maybe even like break up that top line and go back to DeBrincat, Stützle, Giroux, and then I don't know. It's a mix right now in Ottawa, but I think that Pinto definitely has some value, but I do have him in the overperforming category.
Yeah, Giroux actually is one of the better face-off percentage historically, if I'm not mistaken.
He's very good on the draw,
So Gabe Valeri, and we actually talked about him before the show, 10 games played, 7 goals, 4 assists, 27 shots, 44 shot attempts, so pretty good. 26% shooting percentage, 3 blocks, 4 hits, 1542 average time on ice. But last game against the Leafs, he was PP1, line 1, and played over 17 minutes. Things are looking up for Velarde. I do have him in the overperforming category. I don't think anyone would have predicted this breakout. What do you think?
I mean, the thing with him is that he, again, doesn't have a big NHL sample, but he does have an NHL sample. Like, he's had a 54 game campaign. He had 25 games last year. And you're seeing across like his shooting percentage that he's around like a 14% guy, right? Which is like pretty common among NHL players. But he's currently shooting at 25%. He's got 7 goals in 10 games. He just seems to be on a hot streak right now, finding the back of the net. I definitely think he's overperforming, but I really like him as a breakout candidate this year, especially if he's playing first line. And man, like Kopitar, I was watching the Leaf game last night, and obviously like the Leafs end up losing to the Kings again. Shocker. But Kopitar is just a ridiculous stat that they were saying on the broadcast, has led his team in points for 14 consecutive seasons.
Really?
Which is insane. He's like in the top 5 for that stat. Like, I think Crosby is at like 13 or something. So Cope's just been unbelievable. So any exposure to Kopitar, if you got Kempe, if you managed to pick up Velarde off of waivers, because I don't believe anybody was really drafting him initially.
No one was on him.
I think he's a really good breakout candidate for this year. I would be looking to grab this guy, but do expect some regression just in this goal scoring department for sure.
So the last player to round out the overperforming, I have here Cole Caulfield. Cole, I think I said Cole. I forgot the alley. The alley just left for lunch. 9 games played, 7 goals, 3 assists, 31 shots, 52 shot attempts, a 22.6% shooting percentage, 1 block, just 5 hits. And to my surprise, 17 minutes and 13 seconds time on ice, which is only a 30% increase or 30-second increase from last year.
So the thing with Caulfield is, like, last year we kind of looked at when Marty St. Louis came in, he went from being a 1.8 shooter to like around an 18 shooter in terms of his shooting percentage, right? Like, just a ridiculous increase with the coaching change. I actually think he is not overperforming, and I would have him as performing just right. This guy's an elite goal scorer. We didn't know, like, we saw it in the latter half of the season where he was just like shooting at a ridiculous rate. Like, I think his shooting percentage was up towards like 28% or something in like the latter half of the season when he was really hot last year. But like, he's just like, he's an elite goal scorer, and he's proven that through the NCAA. And I think that, you don't expect him to be a goal per game type of guy, but the one thing with Caulfield is he's scoring at 5-on-5, which is a really good indicator that it's not just something that is like fluky, or he's just like getting lucky on the power play or anything like that. Like, obviously he's a threat on the power play to begin with, but like, I think he's performing right along. I'd say slightly overperforming just in terms of his goals, but I like him right around
still
this
has a good outlook. Yeah, still has a good long-term outlook. Okay. So in my underperforming, The first guy, Seth Jarvis. A lot of people have been asking me about him in the Discord. I'm holding him in 2 leagues. I've actually dropped him in a league where my roster is pretty stacked, and I was able to add. I can't remember who I added. I think I might have added Swayman. So 8 games played, 2 goals, 1 assist, 16 shots, 1543 time on ice, 7 blocks, 9 hits. He is power play 2, but he is still line 1 with Aho and Teravainen. Teravainen's been struggling a lot. He's also power play 2. I have Jarvis as my underperforming. Will he continue to underperform? Is there any positive outlook looking forward? I think there is. What do you think?
So I think just what we're seeing is that the second line on that team on Carolina has just been the better line in terms of production.
Yeah,
like Martin Necas looks unbelievable. How are you? Thank you very much for that one, Chris. You're welcome, guys. Andrei Svechnikov has got 7 goals in 8 games. Necas has 5 in 8 games. It just seems like they're carrying most of the workload, and Aho's just been kind of chipping in on the power play as well. So
yeah,
I'm not
should even out soon.
Yeah, there's a big drop off. Like after Aho, like Jarvis is the next highest goal scorer with 2, and he's tied with like Jordan Martin Herka and Brent Burns. So I would not panic on this guy by any means. Like Teravainen isn't even producing as well, like on that line either. Like he's only got 3 points, which are all assists. So I'm not too worried about it. I just think that what we're seeing right now is that Carolina has a hot line, and they've just been solid, kind of similar to Toronto in the sense where like the Tavares line has been really, really good, and the Matthews line just hasn't been up to par in terms of production. So I wouldn't panic on this guy. I think he's underperforming, obviously, and I'm definitely holding him as long as I can, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So the next I have here, Mo Seider. I know you were really high on him going into the season. 8 games played, 0 goals, 1 assist, just 16 shots, 26 shot attempts, 20 blocks, 18 hits, 22 minutes time on ice, which is a minute less than we saw last season. He is on a 82 game pace of 205 blocks, which is more than last year, 184 hits, which is more than last year, and 164 shots, which is less than last year. So we're seeing more D, less offense. We know Hronik's now on power play 1. Seider's underperforming. Will he come around?
He's underperforming. I think we talked about this in the last pod. Like, you don't draft that guy because of his point production. Like, obviously, like last year, he was very good. He had 50 plus points, right? Mm-hmm. And you're like, okay, he's a power play 1D. He's getting 50 points. And then he's getting all these categories. But that kind of like was where he was based off of his ADP. Like, that's what you were expecting. Where the reason why a lot of the time that we like certain players is like guys like Roman Josi, especially, I think is a really good example. Just number one, like we're not drafting that guy because of the fact that we think he's going to get 90 points again, right? Like that's ridiculous.
His floor is really high. Is that where you're going?
For a defenseman. Yeah. So his floor is a lot higher. And not only that, but he produces at a really high rate at peripheral categories.
Yeah, elsewhere, not just points.
It's not just one peripheral category also, it's multiple. Like if you count blocks in your leagues, hits, shots, like he's hitting all 3 of those categories at a very high rate, which is why
he also did miss a game last year, Seider. He played all 82.
Yeah.
So I think that's like, really important in fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Really even though the production is going to vary from player to player each year. Like unless you're talking about the elite guys like McDavid, Draisaitl, McKinnon, like it's going, a lot of the production, especially with a rookie, is going to just vary year by year. But if you can find a player that is consistently like over 150 shots, 150 blocks, 150 hits, like that's a valuable player to have on your team. And I think people are just looking at the production and being like, yeah, like this guy's a bust.
Yeah. Okay. So the next guy here, Sam Bennett, and we kind of touched on it. So I'm just going to talk briefly about Bennett. 9 games played, just 4 points, 32 shots, 58 shot attempts, 19 minutes average time on ice. So he's up 2 minutes from last year and just 5 blocks, 24 hits. He is on pace for 252 shots, which is more than last year, and 192 hits. He is like Vincent Trocheck-esque with less offense. He's been underperforming, but I said, we already talked about it, so we can skim by it. Just as Florida team's been underperforming as a whole. When Ekblad comes back, I think that this team's going to start doing very well, and Bennett is going to completely 180 his game because his 3% shooting percentage is 6% lower than his career average. So yeah, I have him in
Yeah,
the underperforming. He should have a good second half.
good. Definitely underperforming. I agree with you there. Good buy low option as well. I think you're bang on with a lot of the Florida guys. The one thing that really I have a gripe with is that he's not on power play 1. He's currently on power play 2. They have Anton Lundell there on the first power play unit.
I feel like they switch it every game.
It feels like it. It definitely
Yeah,
does, because
they
I've
just
seen him
put
on
whoever
power
they
play
want
1
there.
pretty consistently. So
Me too.
I'm not worried about this guy. Like, he's a buy low. I think like you said, like Florida's gonna come around in terms of production and everything like that. So I agree he's underperforming.
Okay, so moving on to the performing just right. Now, this has been a guy that we were all over in the preseason. If I am not mistaken, I own him in all 6 of my leagues. Vincent Trocheck, 9 games played, 4 goals, 5 assists, 33 shots, 54 shot attempts, just a 12% shooting percentage, 21 minutes average time on ice, plus 3 minutes from what we saw in Carolina, 5 blocks, 26 hits, 3 power play points. You know, he has been elite in fantasy. Like, I think I took him in like the 13th, 14th round, and he is now a top 30 player in almost all of my leagues. I have him as performing just right because this is pretty much what we thought he was going to be like this year, and there was really no indication of him overperforming.
Yeah, I got him in round 9, pick 97, so I jumped on him a little earlier just because I wanted him so bad. You actually sniped him from me in our keeper league, which I was pretty upset about. But yeah, like, anytime you get exposure to a guy like Panarin and the Rangers just look like an absolute wagon, and then you combine that with him playing on power play 1 as well, like, the guy just has a lot of upside to begin with, combined with a pretty high floor. And we saw that he kind of underperformed on Carolina last year. We looked at it as kind of like a one-off, like that entire line just kind of underperformed in general. So, like, I was really excited about him for that sense. But he's just been an absolute stud if you guys have him in your guys' leagues. I want to know what his ownership is. He's 76%, so he's still readily available in some leagues especially. But he's just been so good as of late. Went on a couple game pointless streak there. Like, he had 3 games in a row where he didn't record a point, but he's shooting a lot and hitting as well. Like, 9... he's had 9, 7, 4 hits.
His
in
hits
his past
came around,
games,
yeah.
So it's just been great.
So the second performing just right player here, Elias Pettersson. We actually had him as an ADP bust this season at ADP 45, if I'm not mistaken, and a lot of it was just because he has 0 peripherals. 9 games played, 9 points, 4 goals, 24 shots, 52 shot attempts, 20 minutes ATOI, which is interesting, plus 2 minutes from his career, from last year. This could be indicative of JT Miller missing time, and 11 blocks and 9 hits. So point per game pace, I think he's performing just right. What do you think? Overperforming?
I don't believe I had him as an ADP bust. I can't remember, because I had him the year before as like a high risk, high reward keeper target.
I think I had him. One of us had him as a bust. I didn't like him going into the season. I thought he was way too high in ADP. Like, he should have been ADP like 70, 80, and he was like 40.
The big thing for me is, like, his shooting percentage is consistent. Like, he's a 15, 16% shooter every year, right? So not only that, but he is incredibly good at finding players, and he seems to be just doing well. He's only got 3 power play points, which is shocking, which means he's scoring at 5-on-5, which is great. But the increase in time on ice has just been so good. He's been one of, if not the only, bright spots for Vancouver so far. And, like, I'm a huge fan of the guy, like, personally, like, just as a player. But, you know, like, he's performing just right, in my opinion. Like, it's, as shooting percentage is what his career should be. He's a really good playmaker in that sense as well. He's getting more time on ice. Like, he's right where he should be. He's a talented player.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I think that will conclude it for now on the Prize Picks performance analysis. Use code PUCK, sign up on Prize Picks. They will match 100% of your deposit up to $100. All right, so I just want to conclude this podcast with a little bit of discussion me and Don had, and I'm curious to hear your take. Not knowing league settings, assuming it's just casual league, Kucherov, Pasternak for McDavid, and DeBrincat. What side are you on?
Standard league, you said?
Just standard, yeah. Assuming we don't know the categories.
Kucherov, Pasta for McDavid, and who was it, sorry?
DeBrincat.
I'm going with the McDavid DeBrincat side. I just think that, like, number one, the shot volume, I think, is more. Like Kucherov is just more of a setup guy now. Like he really doesn't have an elite shot volume. Power play points, you're still getting a lot of coverage with McDavid there. Even though DeBrincat's he's been close to a point per game, but I still think that Ottawa power play is going to come around. The biggest thing there is just Pass has been fantastic. Like, don't get me wrong, like Pass has been unbelievable to start the year. He's right on par with McDavid right now. I just think that you look at the two, and Pasta isn't as consistent, I'll say, as McDavid. Like, I don't see Pasta getting 120 points. I can see Pasta getting 40 goals, but McDavid gets 40 goals in his sleep, and he has that 70 assist upside. And then you combine that with the fact that he leads the league in like power play points every year.
Everything, yeah.
And then DeBrincat just, to me, adds more shot volume than Kucherov. So, like, it depends. Like, Kucherov could arguably get 120 points. Pasta could argue. I don't think he's getting close to 100, but he could get 40 goals, 45 goals. So I think if you're looking more towards like the goal, if goals are worth more in your league, I would kind of go more with that Pasta Kucherov side, because I think Kucherov's just like a lock for 35 every year. But at the same time, like DeBrincat, I think is a lock for 35 there this year as well. Like, even though he's been underperforming, so out of the two, I'd just rather have McDavid. Like, he's much more of a safer pick, who just had a little bit of injury history. Same with Pasta as well too. So I think that side's where I'm leaning towards.
I'm just always on the side of taking the best player in the trades, and I think if you have the opportunity to acquire the number one fantasy player, and not by a small margin, he is the number one fantasy player by at least 20% over the player below him in terms of floor and ceiling, right?
Yeah.
Like Matthews or Leon are arguably number two. I think McDavid's floor is much higher than theirs, and his ceiling is considerably higher. And like you talked about that 150 point season, I don't think it's doable, but that is his ceiling, and no one is even remotely close to that. So I'm on the side of, if you can acquire McDavid and you don't have to give up Matthews or Draisaitl or McKinnon, and you can acquire Connor McDavid, the number one fantasy player, like, I'm all for it. I mean, I'm definitely more of, I will trade two players for one if the one is an upgrade. Anyways, I think that's a good way to conclude the podcast. Let us know your thoughts on that trade.
Can we do a couple Discord questions before we go?
Oh, we have some Discord input.
I want to just get to a couple here, guys. Thank you so much for, first of all, just
I didn't see this,
leaving some comments for us to go over in the podcast. So Wicked had a lot. He made us a full list. We talked about a couple here. The one thing that I do want to talk about is New Jersey. Is Vanacek worth grabbing now because of the whole Blackwood situation?
Is Blackwood out?
He is injured.
How sure are you on that?
I'm like 80% sure. I'm gonna look it up right now just to make sure nobody absolutely flames me. But
if I'm not mistaken,
listed as day to day.
He is healthy. And I think he's healthy.
Returns to ice on Friday. Okay, so he just got back this week. He had an upper body injury. What do you think of? I don't like him either.
Blackwood's the starter.
Yeah. Ottawa's second line. We talked about the Pinto Brassard situation. Thank you, Static, for that. Columbus. What's going on in Columbus? My personal take is they're just bad. They're bad, guys. Like, adding Johnny Gaudreau is great. Like, don't get me wrong, but that doesn't, like, one player doesn't make your entire team better.
Someone switched their thoughts. That's a little 180 from what I heard in the preseason.
The other thing was, like, I said I was excited about
saying that in the preseason.
You said that. I fully admit. But what I was saying with Columbus was I was excited. What just happened?
Bad day to be my phone.
I was excited for Gaudreau to play with Laine, and I thought that top line was just going to go off. That was my prediction. With Laine being out, now just coming back into the lineup, we'll see what happens going forward. But like, the rest of their roster is bad.
Yeah, they have no depth. They're terrible. Yeah, I'm off Columbus.
We talked about the Caulfield thing. Maybe do a video on ideal scoring system for a points league. Okay, so what are you running in your fantasy puck league this year? Because I did it based off of like what my ideal scoring is.
Goals, assists, power play points, shots on goal, hits, and then wins, save percentage, goals against average, shutout. So it's just a classic 5x4. I prefer categories. I don't think there's an ideal scoring system. I just think do not put plus minus in your scoring system. Other than that, it is completely dependent on the players in your league, like the guys you play with. And I just don't think there's no ideal system. It's just whatever everyone's comfortable with. You know, like you play in a crazy league with like PIMs and face-off wins.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys have become so accustomed to leagues like that if they were to go play in like a standard points league, they probably wouldn't enjoy it. So it's honestly just a matter of the players you're in the league with, what you guys all agree on. That's my take on it.
I think mine's pretty standard as well. I'll never ever going forward ever after the season play in a league that has plus minus. I think that's ridiculous. I really prefer blocks in my leagues as well too, because it adds a little bit more value to like these kind of like low tier defensemen, for example. And I do like kind of implementing more goalie categories. Like I do wins, goals against, save percentage, and saves.
Yeah,
I think that adds a little bit more value for high volume guys like Demko, for example, who may not be on a really good team, but at the same time he sees a lot of volume, so he's kind of increases his value. But other than that, I hate plus minus. I like blocks, and then I like incorporating goalie categories as well into it.
Okay.
And then let's finish off here with Calgary. Lindholm ? Toffoli ? Rest of season ?
They're fine.
Yeah,
all buy lows.
You got to remember, and I think you talked about it as well, like teams need time to adjust to having new players on the roster and building chemistry and stuff like that. So
that was my
looks fantastic, though. But Lindholm, Toffoli, like they started slow, but I think they're going to be fine.
Huberdeau had so many chances last night.
I saw that. I saw you left the game too.
But Stuart Skinner
season, baby. Let's go. All right. That's it for me, Mike. I think we're good.
Okay, we're good. Thank you. That concludes the podcast for today. Episode 3. It was a pretty long one. I think, a little over an hour maybe, but very enjoyable. We love doing this. If you guys have any suggestions on podcast topics for the next podcast, leave a comment on the video. If you're in the Discord, just write in that Discord podcast topics section. And if you're not in the Discord, guys, I don't know what you're doing. We have hundreds of fantasy hockey fanatics. We talk hockey in there all day long. Make sure you get in. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you leave a like, subscribe. If you're new to the channel, follow us on Twitter at @fantasy_puck. Remember, if you want to hop over on Prize Picks and support the channel that way, use code PUCK. Or if you want to support us on our Patreon, all the links will be in the description below. Any final thoughts?
No, I think every time we come to this podcast, we think that we're going to get it done under an hour. We never end up doing it because we just get into so much discussion. But it's good discussion, and hopefully you guys get some value out of it. So thank you guys for listening. If you're on Spotify, thank you guys for watching if you're on YouTube. And we'll see you next week. I'm excited.
Peace out.
Bye, guys.